Okay, so it's been a couple weeks since I made a video on my 98 Cobra supercharger build, mainly because it's taken a little bit longer than I thought to install these stupid headers. I think I left off in the last video when I was just removing the K-member. Since then I've removed the stock manifolds. I'm not going to bother pulling those out, but I'll basically show you on this side. Right here you can see there's no manifolds on there. No headers yet. I've been basically struggling with the passenger side header. There's really not much room over there. You can see I've got a bottle jack supporting the motor, and I've got the motor pretty much lowered as far as I can without stretching the AC lines too much, just so I can actually get room enough to get the stupid bolts on the passenger side. I'll go ahead and show you. So the hardest part of this project so far is getting that top left bolt up there onto the header flange. And last weekend I was able to get this header on here, get every single bolt on except for that top left one. So today the project is basically lowering this motor down as far as we can, which I've already done, just so we can get room to get that bolt on up there. And I think I've got enough room now to get it on. The reason why you see no bolts on the header, except for those two right there, is because I forgot to put gasket maker on both sides of the gasket. So I only put it on one side, I put the header on, and then I realized I only put gasket maker on one side. So I'm taking the header off, and I'm going to put gasket maker on the header flange. So I have some gasket maker on both sides of the header gasket. The reason why is because I want to make extra sure that I don't have any exhaust leaks with these headers, because I'm going to be boosted with the supercharger, and I just want to make sure that I have no exhaust leaks. So I want to be extra careful. So today, like I said, I'm going to be taking this left header, or the passenger side header, off, putting some gasket maker on, then finally getting this header on, and then moving on to the driver's side. One other thing I want to mention, if you end up purchasing these headers, these are the Pace Setter armor coated headers. You can see that there's really not much clearance between the header and where the K-member mounts right there. So what I'm going to have to do, depending on how much clearance I have there, once I raise the motor back up and put the K-member back in, there might be some more room there, because you can see the pipe kind of tapers off. So depending on how much room we have there, I might have to take a sawzall or a grinder or a cutoff wheel and kind of shave the end of that subframe off there. So I don't really want to do that, but I might have to. So that's the only problem I see so far. Other than that, the headers look, like they're good quality, and beside that one fitment issue there, I'll let you know how that turns out. One other thing, that's where my starter used to be. I had to remove that to install these headers because it was in the way. The starter will fit in there nicely, but I did some research online, and I found out that these headers tend to heat soak the starters on these cars because they're so close to the starter. So that could cause issues where if the car was warm, you could be out driving around and the car wouldn't turn over because the starter was heat soaked from being so close to these headers. You can see it's pretty much touching the header once I put it in there. So the solution to that is to either wrap the headers, which I'm not going to do, or get this right here, starter heat shield. So I picked this up on Amazon for like 23 bucks, and it's just a heat shield material wrap. It basically just wraps around the starter, as you can see in that picture there. So that's the project for today, and I'll basically make another continuation of this video once I get this passenger side done. I have a feeling the driver's side is going to go much, much easier. So again, before I bought these headers, I did a ton of research, on how well they were going to fit, what I was going to run into as far as potential issues, and some of the stuff I did find out before I started the install, but some issues I'm running into that I didn't even read about. such as not being able to get that top left bolt in. So hopefully this video, or this series of videos, will help you if you're thinking about doing, long tube headers, or eventually, like I'm going to be doing here, a Procharged install on an SN95, or even maybe this stuff applies to some of the new Edge Mustangs too. But hopefully this video helps you, and like I said, I'm going to keep making video updates as I move on. Okay, so we have success. Since the last cut here, I've basically taken the header off and put some Permatex gasket maker on the flange of the header, and we've successfully gotten all bolts on, and we've got the starter back on, and we're good to go. The only thing that I have left to do is I'm missing a starter bolt up there, so I'm going to wait until I get that extra bolt before I wrap this starter up with that heat wrap. One other thing is I need to go out and get a smaller stubby wrench in order to torque that last bolt down just a little bit. My regular, I think it's 13mm wrench, is just too big to get in there, so I'm just going to go to the store and buy a smaller wrench to finally tighten that thing down. Just a couple tips with these header bolts here. I've read a lot of different opinions on what works best as far as holding these long tube headers on, as far as bolts versus the stock studs. I've decided to, for the most part, go with the header bolts that Pacesetter provided, and on the threads I've just used some anti-seize, just so they hopefully don't come loose. And I ended up using the stock studs on that front flange right there, and on that flange on the back that we were having trouble with earlier. That's actually a stock stud and a nut. The reason is because it was really hard for me to get a bolt in that hole in the back, and once I decided to just put a stud in the front and a stud in the rear, then everything just lined up. All the holes lined up with the holes in the head, so I didn't really have as much trouble getting that bolt on the back there, because I ended up using a stud there. It was a lot easier to put a nut on that stock stud than it was trying to get a bolt in there and line it up with the hole on the head. So if you ever do long tube headers on, an SN95 Mustang, or like I said, maybe even a new Edge, I'm not sure if it's the same, just remember that. And I've also had to completely remove the front sway bar, and it's just sitting on a jack stand there with the power steering line still hooked up. You remember earlier in my first video, one of my first videos, I zip tied that power steering rack to that front sway bar, but where I had to lower the motor, quite a significant amount to get room enough to get that last bolt on and up there, the motor actually was hitting on that front sway bar, so I actually had to remove the front sway bar so I could lower the motor down as far as I needed to get the clearance I needed to get these bolts on. They're really tough to get to. So the passenger side is pretty much done. I'm just going to go to the store, get a bolt for the starter, and I'll wrap this starter up when I get back. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to get started on the driver's side. I hope it goes a lot easier than the passenger side. I'll make another video when we get some progress going on that.